Hi, I'm James Lee Nathan III, and this is Black Art Today.
Welcome to Black Art Today's video series, Uncovered. Uncovered is Black Art Today's intimate conversations with artists of African descent that represent the African cultures in the genres of literature, visual arts, and the performing arts. In today's episode, Black Art Today interviews author James Lee Nathan III.
My story is somewhat complicated, but it's like anybody else's story, not too different in that regard. It begins in Birmingham, Alabama in 1961.
Birmingham's Commissioner of Public Safety ordered the use of fire hoses and police dogs to quell demonstrations pushing for desegregation in Birmingham.
And takes me to New York City sometime in 1963-64. I grew up in Queens, New York, East Elmhurst, Queens. Yay, East Elmhurst! And of note, that's the same neighborhood of Eric Holder, Louis Armstrong, Willie Mays. So we had these great symbols of Black pride in our neighborhood and community. I'm also a product of the late 60s and 70s, so you've got this radical empowerment type of thing going on. My father was a member of the Nation of Islam, as well as the Organization of African Unity.
Declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
So Black power, Black pride is in my blood. I do not walk away or shy from that. I followed something in me, said, get out and do more in the world. So that pushed me to my art, which took me to the High School of Art and Design. And there I met many more people, like-minded, what we call now Black blurs, Black nerds, way back in the 70s. But now, yeah, we're all a thing now. But back then we were like, separate, distinct people. But moving forward from there, I still wanted to see more of the world. And I had this inkling to get out and be adventurous. So I joined the Air Force, and I saw the world. I was stationed overseas for 18 years of my 20 years in the military. Loved every minute of it. It was just a great experience altogether. Yet, my parents, being from Birmingham, Alabama, were very inclusive. So, at any given time, you'd have, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Haitians, white, brown, pink. You'd have everybody there in the house. So I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood and a very diverse home. But each part of my life so far to date has contributed to the person I am. So the military experience, growing up in the coming of age in the 70s, and then just my world travels. All of those things pretty much shaped the person that I am today, and I'm really proud of that person. It took a while to get to know James, but at 57, I'm really proud of James. The writing is something that was relatively not new to me, not foreign, but it's something that came to me. I didn't really pursue it. I started to write creative writing back in, junior high school, 7th grade. And I was always an avid reader. And that's what they tell you is one of the keys to writing, is being an avid reader. So I always read a lot of history books, a lot of science fiction and fantasy. And it helped me in creating my own characters during high school when I was studying to be a comic illustrator. And we had to create our own comic books and characters. So this reading and writing helped me immeasurably, because all of my characters had depth. And that's what I wanted. And for a while, I kind of let that go. And throughout the military and the first, let's say about the first 10 years I was here in Maryland, I never really wrote anything. I continued to read, but I never really wrote anything. I went through some turmoil in my life, trials and tribulations, which is life in itself. And in that process, it was uncovered that I was suffering from PTSD. And I never really knew why I was feeling this kind of way. And the therapy and brought a lot of that out. And in the process of healing myself, I started to journal. And by journaling, my emotions and what I was feeling, and how to deal with cope with all the things going on, it started to light this fire in me to write. And I wrote a few things down, didn't really care too much about them. My 8-year-old is reading something on my iPad that I was playing around with, and she came to me and she says, "Hey Dad, are you gonna finish this?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "This book, I'm reading this book that you're writing, this Dragon Warriors book, are you gonna finish it? Because it's good." And I'm thinking, well, I didn't write it for an 8-year-old, but okay. And that's how I started to write. It became because my daughter said finish it, and I decided to finish it. This woman right here, right? Melvina. Now this took me, this woman back here. I was totally not prepared for this. I write science fiction. I write erotic crime dramas, Melvina was a totally different thing. So I knew this woman named Sharon Downey, and we decided to meet and have lunch, right? And we're talking about my books. And I could look at her and see that she had something on her mind, whether or not the food was good or the drink was bad, I didn't know. But she had something on her mind. And so I just looked at her and goes, "Well, I have a story." I go, "Okay, go ahead." So I sip my beer, and she starts to tell me about her 3 times great-grandmother.
So I met this guy. His name is James Lee Nathan III, and it turns out that he writes sci-fi novels, what he calls the next level of fiction. So we're sitting having lunch, tapas, and he's telling me about his different novels. And so I said to him, "So I have an interesting story to tell." And so I proceeded to tell him about my 3 times great-grandmother, Madam Melvina Massey, and told him a couple of stories, and he was hooked.
And all I could do was say, "Wow." And then I thought, as she kept talking, I said, I thought about 5 or 6 different ways I could write about this woman. And by the end of the afternoon, when we finished, because the rest of our discussion was strictly about Melvina and her journey. By the time we finished, I had already decided I was going to write this book. So let's talk about Melvina and this whole process of writing this story. Initially, I did a treatment for Brandon Massey and Sharon Downey. Brandon Massey is family historian, and his cousin, Sharon, they find out that they're cousins through Ancestry.com and 23andMe, I believe. So that's their journey, and that journey led them to Melvina. They didn't have a lot of information about their grandmother, yet I had enough to fictionalize a story to a degree, and I had, but like anything I do, I have to go in and I have to research it. I have to go back and look at how I'm going to write a historical fiction, a book about a real person, but I'm going to have to fill in the gaps with fiction or speculation. And I didn't want to do that in big, huge chunks. So I researched, and I became part of their own research team as well. And we collaborated on a lot of different things that were not well known about her, and by us collaborating, we were able to dig deeper and find out more. We have a juxtaposition between Melvina and her son. Melvina runs a brothel, and her son is a cop in Rhode Island, and there's articles about him doing good things, and then there's articles about her doing bad things.
Then we come here to Melvina Massey. This is the focal point of what we're doing here. And we have a little brief history from 1838 to 1911. Here in the picture, we have color-coded 217 2nd Street North, where Madam Melvina Massey lived, which is going to be this house way up here in the corner. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. But basically, this is the exhibit on Melvina Massey here in Minnesota. And it's very in detailed, you know. It's like they have everything from the death records to the will going on here. We have a couple of the other madam houses from the area. Brief history, you know, the chronological order here, down here from the 38 to 11. Some great information. If you guys can get a chance to come out here and visit it, I definitely recommend you do. Now, this is in the Fargo Moorhead area. As you can see here, the place was called the Crystal Palace. In the area known as the Red Light District, or in this area was known as the Hollow. And that's what it was called in Fargo.
It became almost like a vision quest to capture this woman's life. There were so many things about her that I left on the table because I really didn't know how to explore them. You know, and maybe I'll revisit them later on at a later date. One thing is, I gotta believe that she more than likely had another love in her life, you know, and somehow, you know, that went astray because the guy that she ends up marrying is such a cad, such a lowlife. But you have to almost think that there was something else there, and we just never were able to find that out. There was a time where she was going to be married to a man in 1875, but it turns out he was already married. And that was an interesting dilemma. We captured that in the book, and I changed the names, but I do mention it within the prologue and epilogue. I mentioned some of it. There's a lot of misinformation about Melvina Massey, but and I don't want to add to it, but know this. Melvina took a man to court because he didn't keep his promise to marry her. Prior to that trial, there was another trial. When Melvina finds out that this man is already married, she harasses his wife. So she's sending letters back and forth to his wife. The man goes to court, says he wants a cease and desist, you know, to the judge, and they send the paperwork to Melvina, and she comes back to DC to say, oh, I'll be in court. We gonna see. And if you don't dig deeper into the story that you already know about the broken promise, you don't get to what happened, right? And I have to believe that this woman was so mad at this man for not marrying her that set her off on a tangent. But it's 1875. Melvina is about, in her mid-30s by this time, so she's, maybe this was her way of getting out of the life, and really settling down, in this area. But, we don't know. We can speculate in that, and that might be another book, and be speculating on that. I think it's just a privilege. It's been an honor and a privilege to help them tell the story of their great-grandmother. And there's so much more to explore with this character that we're actually going to do. So look forward to that. The historical fiction, in true sense, is about a place in time that's fictionalized. It could be a person, okay? A story about Abraham Lincoln. But if you were not there, and it's not memoirs, and you don't know eyewitness accounts, it's a work of fiction. What they've started to do now over the last 3 to 5 years or so, maybe even longer, now you're seeing more creative fiction. They don't want to call it historical fiction, they call it creative fiction, which is basically historical fiction, but they've added some things to it because they're not there. And what was surprising to me, and what I really thought about it, and it made sense, is that Roots, Alex Haley's Roots, is pretty much a creative fiction, a work of creative fiction, in a sense that he only had 4 or 5 things that he knew about his 5 times great-grandfather, okay? And that was, his name was Kunta Kinte, He lived, his tribe lived near the river Niger, He called the banjo Ko, There was Chicken George and Kizzy. I've named 5. That's all he knew, okay? But when Alex Haley is going back and exploring his roots, there's no computers, there's no Google, there's no Ancestry.com, there's no digital age, right? Now you have all these resources available to you, yet we black folk, and I have to break it down to people that they didn't write about black folk, right? That's just it. They didn't write about black folk. So you had to be very lucky to find certain things in newspapers about black people. Usually it was all bad. There are some that were good, but it was happenstance. So my style of writing, I like to classify it as more of my style of storytelling. I tell stories, and it's really different. People come to it and they're expecting something they've already read before, and when you pick up a novel or a novella that I've written, it's nothing like you've ever read before. And I use a lot of third person or an omnipresence type, omniscient type of a viewpoint. And the reason I do that is because I want you, the reader, to be in everybody's head. I want you to see the whole picture. So you're at a movie theater, right? And you're watching and you see that someone has just been killed in the basement, right? And then a protagonist has come to the top of the stairs and you're like sitting here, don't go in the basement. Well, that's what happens when you read my books. You see everything and you're like, child, nope, he's no good, just move on from him, girl. And then the next 2 pages you're like, see, I told you. And that's what I want. I want you to be sitting on a train or in an airplane, and I want you to be talking out loud as you're reading this book, going, oh, what are you doing? And if everybody's looking at you and you go, this book, this woman, you see her? Oh, So that's what I want, and that's what I hope happens when you read my books. I wanted to take readers on a journey that involved their senses, involved their spirit and who they were, but also I wanted them to think. And in all of my books, and each story I tell, I get the reader to think outside of this box of their own reality and think about the world, think about the universe, think about things differently. I want to say that I'm, apart and unique from other writers, but I would assume that other authors do the same thing. If you love a particular author, you're going to read them over and over again. You're going to emulate some of their style and craft. But I understand my own limitations. So I have a bevy of authors that I love to no end, and I just extract what I need. Basically, I copy something I see within them that they're doing, and I put my own little dash of James across it. For instance, Michael Crichton. I loved how he told or introduced the reader to new technology, right? And it's stuff that was readily available, but people had different ideas about it or hadn't been exposed to it yet. So now quantum is the big thing, everybody's thinking about quantum. But I have exposed people in my books to quantum and to hyperspace technologies 7 years ago. So when I first released Ibrahim Unites, right? First released this book, and it was in an ebook format, and I'm just on Google searching around and checking out who's looking at my book and everything, and I came across this website, and it talked about downloads and it talked about Ibrahim Unites. I'm like, oh. So I click on that, and lo and behold, it's had 3,000 downloads, and it's free. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, it's free, And so I'm curiosity. I'm like, well, let me keep delving a little bit deeper into this. And I kept digging, and all of the reviews were positive, and it was also overseas. And I'm thinking, wow, okay. That's interesting. But I didn't want to stay on that site too long because I didn't want any kind of, viruses or anything else. So I just jumped off of it. This didn't feel right. But I said, that's curious. A month later, I did the same thing. This person in Portugal had downloaded my book and was offering it on his blog post for people to download. But he had written a synopsis about the book, and the synopsis was just so revealing, where it said, this is a book that will make you think, and the way you read this book is you find yourself a quiet place with no distractions, and then open your mind. L.A. Banks. L.A. Banks wrote this series called The Vampire Huntress, and I want to say it's either book 2 or book 3. Carlos the Vampire, one of the protagonists, he has to plead for forgiveness because he's done something really wrong and egregious to Denali. And for a page and a half, the author, L.A. Banks, takes you through what every man goes through when he has to beg for forgiveness. And the way she covered that, I was like, oh, this is spot on. And I was reliving stuff. I was like, oh my God, this is how I've been begging, And so, and I said, that's what I want. When I reflect things in my writing, I want people to look at this and go, that's me. I've been there, And so I love that about the way she wrote. Rest in peace. And then there's other authors, Elmore Leonard and Walter Mosley. I mean, they write certain way dialogue, and their characters are certain. I mean, characters you can't forget. Okay, and I said to myself, when I create my characters, I want people to naturally gravitate toward them. Even my villains, I want them to gravitate toward them. Strengths and weaknesses. So I believe that one of my strengths from the reviewers has been my ability to world build in my science fiction. I build worlds that are believable and probable. You can say, oh, I could see this. And I even get down to the politics within these particular worlds. And that's been identified as a strength. Not many sci-fi writers that start off, the problem they have is world building. But not me, from my reviewers, everybody says the world building is on point. The depth of the characters is another strength. For me, as I introduce a character to you, there's a protagonist, there's a villain, and there's a couple of other ancillary characters. But each one you understand to a degree, and you understand how they fit within the story. And so that's another strength. From my own views, I could do with more plot development, in a sense that I want the plot to flow, the pacing, as well as people being able to grasp some of the concepts that I'm trying to articulate. But a lot of the stuff I speak to is deep. And in some of my books, you're questioning your own spirituality. You're questioning the way we treat each other. Okay, and so if you're getting that, then you're good. I could care less if you understand, why they're trying to blow up this building. Forget it. But if you're getting this point to what I'm trying to get you past a certain area of your own comfort zone, then that's great. But I need to work on that more. I also need to work on more of a. Certain people want. I guess I could ease back on my backstories too much. I give too much background. People are giving me reviews on those, and I see that in a sense, but and I'll leave it with this little anecdote. The first time I saw Star Wars, okay, in the 1970s, the first time I saw Star Wars, sat through the whole movie, I walked out of the theater, and all I could think about was, who the hell are the Jedi? And how can I be one? So I wait almost 40 years, and then you find out the story, and then I gotta realize, oh, you gotta read these books to find out who the Jedi are. There's a whole, and this is not really the beginning, this is like toward the end of the story. I'm like, what? So when I decided to write this whole story, this whole slew about the Dragon Warriors and Ibrahimian Knights, I realized, oh, James, you told this story, and you have backstory there, but there's no origin. People don't know how they got there. They don't know anything about these beings. So I had to create another book, and that's None Before Us. And that gives you the history of the Allenbay and the Dragon Warriors. Then I realized, well, there's a whole segment of area between the two conflicting parts of this book, and I haven't captured that. How do I do that? So then I had to create this book called Crime Fighter to do that, And so at the end, I'm looking at it and going, okay, I think I covered all the bases. Then I realized, no, there's more. you know. So look for, I'd say, in about 2 years, the unabridged version of this entire tale, and it'll be this huge big book, and it'll have all the stuff in it, and I'll like, God damn, you know, I'll just do a mental dump on that. But to me, if you can create worlds and give backstory and meaning to what these characters are and what they're doing and why they're fighting, that's important. That's monumental, because people are going to be asking those questions. This whole, I base a lot of what I write in reality. It's real. I mean, these things actually happen. I'm just telling a different spin on it. And some people, you know, you look deep and close enough, they can say, wait a minute, this is history. I mean, this happened. Well, yeah, exactly. You know, so, but yeah, I could do better with easing off more the rest of the backstory and more with the exposition and plot. That's an interesting question. And so my answer is not going to be what people may assume it to be. My contribution, my kids are my contribution. Each one is uniquely different, and each one is going to leave their mark on society and our culture. I'm more than sure of that. And that's part of me and their mothers, but that's who they are. And if I can do anything, is to, you know, ensure that legacy, it's continuing to tell them stories and tell them tales. That's pretty much, you know, a lot of why I write, you know, my kids. Telling them stories on their way to school about my childhood and me coming up. Sharing those things with them, you know, inspires me and motivates me, and also they see a lot of the same things, you know. If I can relate to them when I was growing up about certain things that are happening now, they see the synergy within that. I've always tried to share with all of my children, you know, where we are and, you know, where we came from, the Nathan part of this family, this story, and that's what I guess that's what fathers do, or what parents do, and what we all should do with this generation and the next couple of generations down. If we give them those things, to let them know that, you know, this is a long line, all right? You're a piece of this, and it's important that you understand your place in history as well as your place in the now. This is your world, but you got to get out and claim it. You just can't sit back and let other people do stuff. Get out there and vote, get out there and volunteer. My father used to say, you have to give a damn about something. And you know what? Each one of them cares about something, and they're moving toward that. And so that's my legacy. That's them. Black art today is really, how do I say this? It's an important cog in our culture. We are very artistic. We are very creative. We tell great stories. You know, we dance. We do all these things. It's part of who we are. Yeah? And having a resource like Black Art Today to bring or expose people to different media, different artists, different creatives, is an awesome thing. When approached, I couldn't say no. I was like, yeah, I'll participate. Yeah, put me down. It's amazing to me, the creativity within our culture, and people need to be exposed to that. They see one thing. I've been to many different places, and black art, black, just the creativity alone is just sometimes blows my mind. I look at these kids, at what they're able to do, and I'm like, whoa, I mean, it's just mind-boggling. I'm like, I didn't have this stuff. I didn't have these things, you know? And, but that's where we are today, you know? And it's more, you know, it's spoken word, you know? It's literature, it's poetry, it's a novel, it's science fiction. It's a lot of different things that people just don't know that we're part of, and we create. You know, you're exposed to different types of art, expressionism, and I'm just happy to be a part of it and to be considered as a part of it. And I can't wait. This is moving forward. I can't wait to see what the next year brings in Black Art Today.